To you again. It's the 30th of March, and we're continuing our look at the Eightfold Path. We are looking at the fold or step of effort or diligence, which we began last week. And just reviewing a little bit, the tradition speaks to the four aspects around which we should place our diligence. And that is of being aware of when unskillful, negative factors, those that cause ourselves or others to suffer, are present. And to encourage them to no longer be present. And that encouragement can cover a lot of territory. Sometimes it requires some careful looking, some careful investigation, really coming to it and embracing of it and looking at it. And other times simply being aware or mindfulness is, right now your frustration is arising. Sometimes we've already done a fair amount of that. We can look at it and say, oh yeah, I know you. We don't have to do this again. And it can simply fade away. Lovely. So there can be quite the spectrum depending on the need for what arises to help it move on. The second factor is doing those things that we can to discourage those factors from arising in the first place. And having a regular meditative practice is one of them. Touching that spaciousness. Doing loving kindness practice is one. Spending time with us. Spending time with people that share the path in some way is one of them too. And the factors that are often referred to in terms of these things that we would like to encourage not to be present, or when they're arising to go the other way somehow or another, are very often called the hindrances. We talked about them last time. The other factors, the other two parts of the diligence or effort, are noticing when things have arisen that we find to be helpful to move us away from suffering, us and those around us. Do what we can to continue to have them be there. And likewise, when they're not present, to do all we can to bring them up. Again, a meditative practice helps with that as well. That the not bringing up the negative and the bringing up of the positive are very, very similar in a lot of ways. Very often have the same kinds of activities that support those two things at the same time. Stand by 1 second. There we go. I'm going to share something here. Let's see if I've got the right one. Yeah, did it. So the factors that we try to encourage, one of the traditional ways of looking at them is called the 7 factors of awakening. And again, this is pretty much taken from the web page for our group. So they are there. Those are the 7. The first one is mindfulness, which also happens to be one of the Eightfold Path, one of the steps that we'll be talking about shortly. So it shows up again in this way. And we talked a bit about that last time, that so much of the practice of diligence, in fact, so much of the practice, period, rests on our mindfulness of mind, our mindfulness of what's happening with our mind from moment to moment, to being aware of who we're with, how we're coming across, how we'd like to come across, when certain feelings and thoughts are beginning to arise in us, whether skillful or unskillful, that we know that, because we can't cultivate anything or ask it to stay or go if we're not aware that it's there in the first place. So this continuing mindfulness of mind, and of course, they don't say mindfulness of mind here in the 7 factors of awakening. It's just a practice of mindfulness, which, you know, the 4-fold practice of mindfulness of body, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, and so forth. But for me, in what I've noticed in my practice, it's mindfulness of mind, body also, but the primary one is what's going on, and not to be riding the reflexive, reactive old ways of habit energy. And the way to not get caught up in that is to be aware of what's happening. Some teachers, in fact, most of them, I think, separate out mindfulness as a particular factor of awakening, separate from the ones that are sometimes called active and the ones that are called passive. It's ones that gets involved with all of them. Fred Epsteiner, my teacher, says he thinks there are really 6 factors of awakening, all of which depend on mindfulness. That second factor that we're trying to cultivate, we try to keep in our minds, is called investigation of phenomena. Another way of saying that, I think, is being curious, allowing a continuing curiosity of what's happening, investigating what's arising in the mind, looking as clearly as possible and with a deeper understanding at the arisings around us, particularly those in other people. On my screen, you all are over here, and I keep, anyway, never mind about that. I put in a Yogi Berra quote there. You can observe a lot by just watching. That's another way of putting that investigation phenomena. But the watching, again, is the mindfulness. Keeps coming back to it. The observing is the deep looking. Just going back a bit to the mindfulness aspect again, part of that mindfulness goes back to the view and the intention that we remember, which is another word that mindfulness, I mean, when it's translated directly, it often is translated as smriti. Smriti is a Sanskrit word that means remembering. We remember that view, which is an understanding of the Four Noble Truths, of impermanence, of no self, all those things. That's a part of our mindfulness as well that informs the rest of it. And it is from there also that we're investigating phenomena. Again, we're moving away from our reflexive, very often judgmental or critical perception of the phenomena that are arising both outside of us and inside of us, and applying the tools we've learned to see things more as they are. We're learning that, I think we talked about this last time with the hindrances, when that person, pardon me for using this rather stale metaphor, but when that person cuts us off, that if the first reaction is, what a jerk, then our mindfulness is saying, aha, pay attention. Who is that? Is that somebody's son or daughter? Is that somebody's brother or sister? Is that somebody's parent? Is that somebody's student? Is that a teacher? Is there more to that than jerk? Which is our painting of it, and then we stop. And we dehumanify, pardon that made-up word. we do that to people when we make those kinds of one-word judgments. So for me, that is an investigation of phenomena in a way. It's challenging our first perception of the phenomena and using, again, the tools we have to go deeper into what this phenomena really is. Eventually, we get down to this that I'm seeing here that is annoying me at the moment, because my annoyance arises. Like me, as a Buddha nature. Like me, is deluded and obscures that nature in various ways. And we begin to find the walls shifting, softening, becoming more porous. And that allows feelings of caring to one person saying, the difference is, here goes somebody weaving in and out of traffic, causing a lot of dangerous circumstances for a lot of people. And the thought is, I hope he just runs into a bridge plant. And suddenly you're wishing death to that jerk. To go through even very quickly this process, all of a sudden you're aware, oh, of course I don't wish that. This is like me. May they be well. Well, diligence and effort comes up. What do you know? I thought that's what we were looking at right now in terms of the Eightfold Path with diligence and effort. And the same word is there. When it's used with the 7 factors of awakening, it doesn't usually have the connotation of those 4 aspects that we've been talking about, of the things that arise, so forth. It's more of the usual words of diligence and effort. Energy, enthusiasm, you can read what's written down there. The will to be mindful, the volition to be mindful. Sometimes you may not feel like it. You don't want to be mindful. You want to just, roll with the old habit energies because they're comfortable at times. You want to go ahead and have your rant, let's say you're of that. And this where the effort comes in, of saying, can. Is that really what you want to do? You know, there's a will to be mindful and to continue to use, again, view, the intention, so forth. How do we cultivate that? You know, you can say, hey, I'm energetic now, and now I'm not. What do I do to, do a, what do you call those drinks? Take one of them. Sometimes, reading inspiring books or listening to inspiring speakers gives me energy. I can feel it. So that's one of the ways. Sometimes there's the sort of almost contradictory thing. If I'm really tired, I got no energy, get up and go out for a walk. Sometimes that can really be helpful. This next one here is joy, all things. Sure. What is written here sounds a lot like Thich Nhat Hanh, probably came from him. Touching that which is refreshing, beautiful, both within and without, always present if we look for it. Brings us that. We've talked about that at times. I've talked about spending a moment with those lovely times when nature has given us some awesome thing to be present to, or when a relationship has given you some awesome thing to be present to, that we spend some time with it, not rush on past. At least note that it's happening. There are a lot of them if we pay attention. And when we go through our day and reach the end of it, so often what we're remembering are the difficulties, the little obstacles that arose. So making a point of noticing and remembering, I think, is important, that we not have a lopsided view of what we're experiencing throughout the day. The other, the word that it comes from, piti in Pali, I think it's priti in Sanskrit perhaps, is a extremely energetic state that you can experience in meditation. In one of the early states of absorption, where the energy just rushes through to the point that the body may shake. You're no longer having even breaths. It can be quite powerful in that regard, and it feels rapturous and hard to describe, but it's very palpable and can result in a high energy level after it passes. And what's not included in this, although tranquility, the next one speaks to it a bit, is sukha. Look at the opposite of dukkha. Sukha, this sense of being, well, at ease, connecting with my word I want right now, but sense of well-being, present, even in the midst of it all. Sukha. That has some of these aspects of tranquility, which is the next one associated with it. And you know, when people talk about Buddhism as the practice or path that is all about suffering and doom and gloom, you know, there you go. This is what we're cultivating here: joy, tranquility. And then there's concentration. We practice that when we do calm abiding meditation. That meditative state of joy or rapture is arrived at through the process of concentration. So these are all connected. And the capacity to keep our attention where we would like it to be isn't just something for when we're sitting and meditating. We can use it all the time. Sometimes we can concentrate fairly well when we're interested in something, or when our life depends on something, we can concentrate extremely well. But there are other times when we might be in a conversation we wish we weren't in, or we might start trying to rearrange the living room furniture in our mind rather than being present to the conversation, where our capacity to concentrate can, and combined with our mindfulness and our wanting to be present, can result in our capacity to stay with it. I may not have been the best example of concentration during the course of the day, but I'm sure you all understand what I'm getting at there. And the last of the 7 factors is equanimity. I'm going to run over on the talking a bit tonight. I'm just doing it right now. Anyway, equanimity, balance in the face of change. When is change? Change is always. So it's, you know, it's balance in the face of this. Sometimes change, of course, comes a great deal faster and more abruptly than at other times. Being aware of all phenomena without grasping or aversion. Grasping and aversion to the hindrances, right? Again, these things go back and forth. Joy or the rapture, the practice of concentration, part of that is being, quote, secluded from the hindrances, but the hindrances are no longer present. Equanimity is asking the same. Being aware of all phenomena, including the ones that usually we either want to grasp and hold on to or push away and get rid of, without that grasping or aversion. To simply be present to what is. Accepting. Doesn't mean agreeing. It doesn't even mean we may not try to change something. But the equanimity is, this is how it is. And acceptance reminds me a fair amount of Thich Nhat Hanh's description of patience. It's not a waiting for things to change and get better. It's an acceptance of things as they are. So these are the 7 factors that traditionally we try to cultivate for this as part of our effort. And another part of effort can be the Bramhaviharas. I thought that I should bring them up as another aspect of what it is we want to be diligent about as we move through our day. Let me see if I can go back to there. Go here. I think it might be this one. So they're the four Bramhaviharas, the four abodes of love. The Buddha said if you practice the seven factors of awakening and the four Brahmaviharas, that's what it's all about. Of course, a lot of things get put like that, but pretty powerful stuff. Interestingly, you see equanimity and joy show up again. This is what Thich Nhat Hanh calls true love. These four factors. He talks about them over and over again from every angle you can possibly imagine. We've talked about them a fair amount as well throughout the Lojong, for example. Loving kindness or metta. We did some of that this evening with ourselves and then to all beings. Wishing the best, holding in the light and love. Second one is compassion. And for those of you who were doing the Lojong, again, here's for Tonglen. That's a specific practice around compassion. Not only wanting the best, but also seeing suffering, being aware of suffering, wanting to relieve suffering, and doing what can be done to do that. Compassion is a very active word. Now here we have empathetic joy. It's a little different than the joy or rapture that was talked about in the seven factors. Sometimes it says experiencing joy at the joys of others. And of course, this is having joy at the wholesome joys of others. If somebody got away with $150 and is really happy, we don't share that kind of joy. But to take joy in someone else's victory, even if we were the losing party. To really allow ourselves to be present to the joys that other people are experiencing and be happy that that person is experiencing joy in their life right at this moment. That in fact brings us joy. It's empathetic joy. And it's sometimes fairly easy to make a note of when we're not doing it. Somebody's really happy about their success. And I was chuckling in memory, I can't remember exactly how it goes, of an author that was talking about another author's success and how she just wishes she'd trip and fall down the stairs. Thing. She said it in a very funny way, and you knew she was kidding. But, somebody who's succeeding in your field and you wish you were, to be able to truly allow that joy to arise, I'm so happy for you, can be a tough one and can really help us to explore a bit of, that wasn't a part of what I was experiencing. I was really jealous. I really wanted to be that person. I wanted to have that success, and I didn't like it that they were. I tried harder than them. I've been at it longer than them. I deserve it more than boo, right? So to notice when that's happening and to wonder, gee, can I feel happy for them? Maybe. And although it's often put as empathetic joy, this wasn't one teacher I've heard say, celebrate your own joy as well. When you are joyful about something that you see as truly positive and wholesome and helpful and so on, enjoy your joy. Don't see it as necessarily driven by ego. Joy may arise in you for any number of reasons, and there it is. Don't try to push it away, or well, I shouldn't be feeling that way about my own. Sometimes it can be a bit of a balancing act. Sometimes the ego does want to come in and claim everything, which is what it does. But to enjoy our own joy, to appreciate our own joy, I think just like giving loving kindness to ourselves can sometimes be helpful in cultivating empathetic joy. And the last of the four Bramhaviharas is equanimity. There we are again. It's also one of the 7 factors of awakening. This one sometimes is called equal love for all beings. It has that little different twist to it. And very often in discussions of this, the idea of, you mean I should have the same love for somebody I really despise as I do for my dearest loved one, and the same one again for this person I'm passing in the street I've never seen before and will never see again. And that's looking at very conditional, temporal comparison. As we do these other aspects of the four Bramhaviharas and the 7 factors of awakening, increasingly see others as no different than ourselves. Then this type of equanimity of having equal love. In the book I've been thinking about bringing up next, there was an interesting discussion about this in terms of the practice of metta for people that were perceived as monsters, like Hitler, for example. And part of the commentary that was in there was, Hitler defined groups of people as different, undeserving, and in fact, deserving of death. If you're seeing Hitler as someone who is undeserving, so forth and so on, you're in the same boat. So just allow that to bubble up when the anger at so many of the things we see and so many of the people that are behind those things arises. Practicing loving kindness with them and acknowledging their humanity moves us toward that type of equanimity. And with that, I will stop. Bowing to you all. Stop share.